Good evening. High atop the south side slopes. Damn it, I screwed up again.
No, you did fine. That was it. Oh, no,
No,
you did
it's
blow
the
it.
flat.
No, that's my bad. It's the flat.
From high atop the south side flats. Jesus Christ. I've never...
And we're off.
Hell, it's the third round. Whatever. Welcome with our guests this afternoon, Heather Arnay, esteemed elected official, and Mary Shaw, Pennsylvania Director of America Vote. I'm your announcer, Pat Clark, and I don't think in the entire time I've actually identified myself this whole season.
Yeah.
And our host, Chris Potter,
Don't make me
Executive
host
Director
of the
Pittsburgh
City
City
Paper.
Paper.
But you're the host today. I'm just.
I am?
Yeah, you are. You're it. Yeah.
All right, well, I'll host
I'm just here
then.
to look pretty.
Well, you have to hold up your end of the whole journalism thing, too.
Yeah, I'll do what I can.
And speaking of which, let's dive right into it. So, Pennsylvania, in case many people are unaware, of course, is having a presidential primary on April 22nd. Thank you. Well-informed member of the press corps here. It's largely been framed as essentially race versus gender in the scope of many in the, as Dr. Michael Savage calls it. Yeah, exactly. The midstream media, but we obviously have nothing to do with the mainstream here. So
we could totally change the dynamic
we could
by
change
how we frame
we
them.
could change the whole framing. Absolutely.
Wait,
If
how
we
are
can,
you framing it? Yeah, in City Paper, how are you framing it? That's a good question.
Geez, how are we framing it?
well, you had a whole issue on the frame, didn't you?
We
You
did.
can't frame the frame. You have to
Right.
pick your frame.
Right. How did we frame it actually? Large. You know, I'm not sure that we framed it too much, but it's been framed as a sort of old school versus new school kind of thing, and I think certainly
you think
around
that's
here.
accurate?
No, honestly, I think any attempt to divide these two different, really complicated candidacies into one camp or the other is pretty simplistic. I know people who are, I'm about to quote myself, which is like that terrible like the total egotistical thing or whatever. But I mean, I know gays and lesbians who are more comfortable with Hillary Clinton than they are with Barack Obama, and I know Reagan Democrats who have absolutely no interest in gay and lesbian issues who are also more comfortable with Hillary Clinton than Barack Obama. So I think we end up in the media and sometimes on this program sort of using these kind of reductive terms and categories or whatever to sort of simplify issues for folks, because in some ways you have to do it because you only have X amount of words, 600 words.
I mean, I think that's an excuse. I mean, that the media has to make things simple and not factually accurate in order to help the populace pick a president.
I don't know that they're factually inaccurate so much as they're factually limited. And I think very often, as somebody who has to write, for example, I'm writing about the 18th congressional district in next week's issue of the paper. First of all, just even describing that district takes you 200 words because it's like that. So you end up having to leave certain things out because people just sort of need to get a handle on what this thing is about. So I agree with you.
The framing of Senator Clinton, I find very problematic. I mean, not just because of sort of the gender politics. So certainly here's somebody who's the first person who's really been considered a serious contender for the White House who's also female. There's nothing status quo about that.
Right.
We've never had a female president of this country, while other countries have. So 41 countries have had female presidents and 43 have had female prime ministers, but we haven't. So it's not at all status quo or old school. In fact, nobody still knows what, if Senator Clinton won, no one knows what Bill Clinton would be called. Right. They don't know what his office would be in charge of. They don't know what his job title. I mean, it would take the whole system and mess it up completely. If Barack Obama wins, a lot of history will be claimed, but everybody knows what Michelle Obama will be called, First Lady, and what her job will be picking out floral arrangements and doing seating plans. And if she gets to do more than that, a lot of that's because Senator Clinton changed what it meant to be First Lady when she went into the White House. So, I mean, I just think that somebody who's spent her life really fighting against the status quo, I think it's more than ironic, but fairly intentional by some members of the media to try and spin that she's old school and status quo.
Why do you think it's happening then? If she is a sort of paradigm-shattering candidate, and in many ways she is, I mean, why do you think she's been associated with the old guard or whatever you want to call it?
Well, I think that because there's an interest in the country for change and for something new and exciting. And that would support Senator Clinton and strengthen her campaign. I think that most of the media, and this is probably because, I'm a strong feminist, but I mean, is still male dominated, and I think has no sort of inherent interest in promoting Senator Clinton's, race to the White House. And I think, there is some desire to.
Do you really think that's true? I mean, I don't know what you mean when you talk about male-dominated media, said the editor of City Paper. I mean, but do you really think that there are? Do you think that there are editors and media types, whether it's Tim Russ or whoever, who are like, yes, I must support the male candidate in this race because we all have to stick together, otherwise these, emasculating bins will cast us out of our seats of power and ruin our lives. I mean,
I don't think it's that at such a conscious level. But I think that, it's more than what I think. Study after study, and Nicholas Kristof had a piece in the New York Times about this morning. Harvard and Princeton, et cetera, have all done these sort of implicit studies where people look at general images or pictures of people, and what they found was that gender memory was much stronger even than racial memory. So that when they showed them pictures of basketball players, white, black, male, female, and they'd ask people to recall what they had seen. For the male players, they'd remember the color of their jerseys, so race was actually forgotten. But they would always say, "Oh, I saw an African-American woman playing this team. Was it wearing a red jersey, or a white woman was wearing a blue jersey?" So gender was something they kept tagging back onto those players, and I think that gender is something very complicated in our history and in our culture, and we certainly have seen some blatant, examples of it with people like Chris Matthews or, all the good guys on Fox News. And, even just the response to what happened in between Iowa and New Hampshire. Senator Clinton loses in Iowa, and suddenly people are talking about how she has no reason to even be in the race any longer, how she needs to drop out, how she's dead in the water.
But what's so ironic is that for me, from my point of view anyway, I guess I bought into she was the anointed candidate, and I railed against that internally in the beginning because it seemed like she was part of the status quo, the old machine, she wasn't going to be responsive to, I don't know, progressive. It's kind of embarrassing to look back on because I feel very I've changed my position as she's changed. Not on purpose, but as she's the identity of who she is has changed throughout. When she lost in Iowa, I looked at her with fresh eyes. I did, and I started to ask myself, how do I feel about that? That's not what I was expecting to have happen. I expected for this thing to happen and for me to be irritated and reticent, but get on board at the end. And then, wait a minute, everything just changed, and now I somehow feel like this isn't the way that it was supposed to happen. And then I started to wonder, why is that? So not to put myself on the couch here, but I find it really ironic that and I like to think that I'm a strong feminist too, and I've, jokingly I said to you earlier, my daughter, she is very into Hillary because she's a woman, and she's 6 years old, and I'm really excited that she has an opportunity to be into a woman who might be president. So that's very important to me, but sorry to go back. You please have to edit when I make a retard out of myself.
This is all live.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Especially when I said retard?
No, it's too late.
I quit.
Thank you for joining us here on the third round, Mary Shaw. It's been a pleasure.
Done.
I'm curious.
This is why I don't run for office right here.